I'm Obi, that's Ed, and we are drinking from the Garden Hose, your new favorite podcast. The charm is that we suck. We suck so much we missed an episode. You can find us wherever you get your podcast, either Apple or Spotify or Google or iHeartRadio, wherever it is you get podcasts, we're there. So go there, like us, download us, leave comments. Feedback is a gift. Ed, how are you?
Doing great, but a little bummed. We had an awesome episode that we thought we taped, and it doesn't exist. And so now we're doing a redo. Not sure, are we going to launch this on a Tuesday? Are we going to wait till Friday? Are we just going to miss and wait 2 weeks? Are we going to have a new every other Friday schedule? What are we going to do, Obi? We haven't figured this out because clearly we're amateurs.
Well, I think we're due for an episode on Friday, the 9th, right? But I think we should drop this one on the 2nd to make up for our missing one. So hopefully you're listening to this on the 2nd, and then next week do one for the 9th.
All right, that's how we'll do it. So, Obi, I told you before I have some theory. So let's just set the backstory for our fans here to understand why our first episode of all time was the trouble with technology, and it still holds a year later. So what people don't understand is it's just comical for us to even get this thing up to record. Usually we set a time to meet 7:30, 8 o'clock. Doesn't really matter. We usually start a half hour late because one of us can't get their computer to work. They can't get the sound to work. Their soundboard doesn't work. They're using a streaming service that sucks, so we have to switch over to Zoom, and that is what happened last time, and it was my computer that sucked, so I was a half hour late. And Obi, I know you sent me the text saying you couldn't find the downloads. I think the reason you couldn't find the downloads is I don't think we recorded last episode. I think we spoke, and we just never pressed the record button.
I think that is apt to happen. That did happen in the beginning when we were doing this once, but we caught it as I was doing the intro. I'm like, oh, it's not saying recording. Let's stop it. And over again. So that's certainly a possibility. I'm looking right now, by the way, and it is saying it's recording. Or it did save and didn't do its auto download, and I shut it off before then. There's so many things that could have happened. And then, of course, we were both on vacation, and I was in the middle of nowhere on purpose. Very little internet. My computer was acting horrific. And yeah, I could not find it on my computer. Have looked a few times since, could not find it on my computer. And I couldn't even text you to tell you because you and I have different phone services. And I only had internet connection, no 5G, and my phone would not successfully connect to you. And I think you saw that when I texted you most recently for setting up this recording time. You got 8 messages saying, hey, I can't find the download. And you're like, yeah, we already handled that one.
Yeah, and I'm telling you, because remember, if you remember, I was late getting on. I had to switch computers. And then we were worried about the Zoom timing out because I was so late and we were so cheap that we're using free Zoom. I am now, after speaking, I'm going to get into the next topic in a second, but I am 100% convinced after sharing the news with some of our fans who were disappointed that we didn't drop an episode last Friday. I was explaining what happened, and they're like, I guarantee you guys didn't record it. And I'm like, you're right. I never saw the red button. Now I'm thinking back. We were just flummoxed or whatever the hell that word is. And I never saw the red recording, and that's why you didn't find it. You should stop looking. We never recorded the episode. And here's the thing. It was probably the greatest episode of this podcast.
For those of you who are fans of Jack Black and his music, there's a song he does called The Tribute to the Greatest Rock and Roll Song. And he tells the story of how when faced with the devil, he played the greatest song ever. And he's singing the song. He's like, this isn't that song. This is just a tribute to that song. And this episode will be a tribute to the greatest episode ever. So let's get into it. What we talked about on that episode, because I think it's important, is Ed has a nemesis Ed spent a good portion of the episode guessing who the nemesis was, never figured it out, and immediately after the episode sent me another 20 questions about said nemesis. And I would just like to thank that nemesis and ask them to continue to send me dirt on Ed.
Yeah, well, and here's the real kicker of the whole thing. This is why last episode was the greatest episode of all time, because I thought I knew who my nemesis was, and I really thought it. I sent you afterwards, and you really lied to me to throw me off in the wrong direction. And I tell you that you lied to me because, again, when I was talking with my fans yesterday about our troubles and tribulations and what the episode was about, me having a nemesis, I conveniently left out the part that you never actually told me who the nemesis was, and that was the whole point of the episode. And the nemesis copped to being my nemesis. And so it just ruined the episode because the whole story arc of me having a nemesis and you lying about who it was, so I would never guess who it was, it's over because the nemesis said, ha, 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 ha. Isn't it funny, 20 years in the making, you having a nemesis. And so I know who my nemesis is.
Well, we will see if A.
Oh no, I'm positive. They copped to it. They admitted it to my face. They told me I'm your nemesis because here's what they said. They said something. I'm like freaking Columbo here. They said something that no one would have known unless they listened to last episode, which wasn't recorded. So there's only two people who know this, and it was about the picture taken on the cruise ship and how you got a message. You told me, you said, I saw it on Facebook, Ed, but somebody sent me a message with the photo. Well, said nemesis yesterday said, well, he actually saw, this is what they said. The nemesis said, well, he saw the photo on Facebook before he opened the message. The only way you would know that Obi opened the message would be as if you sent the message.
Well,
so I know who my nemesis is, Obi.
Well, I'm going to encourage your nemesis to continue to send me dirt.
Well, the fact is, though, the gig is up. I know who they are. And here's the kicker. Actually, I already said what the kicker is, but here's the double kicker. The double kicker is you lied so good. You actually had me convinced that night that my nemesis wasn't who it really is. And by the way, that's who I really thought it was. And then, but the way you lied about, oh, not a mutual friend, then I started thinking, and I actually was accusing my 74-year-old uncle of being my nemesis. And I was prepared to call him out, which I am doing right now, but I was going to call him out as my nemesis on the next podcast and obviously make a fool of myself. And you would have been giggling like a little girl. And it all backfired because my nemesis got so excited. Oh, and her husband, oh, he was laughing like a little girl, too. He saw the message after he saw the thing. That's how I do. Oh, it was beautiful. I just sat there. I didn't say anything. I said, oh, well, I can't wait until we record the next episode. Beautiful.
Well, it sounds to me like your nemesis outed themselves. I take pride in not having outed your nemesis. But since no names are being used, I'm going to assume you got it because you seem to know who it was and you seem to be suggesting you know who it is. But we'll see. Maybe you'll get a new nemesis now inspired by this. The other thing, though.
My uncle may take up being a nemesis now that I've accused him of being a
Yes.
nemesis.
The other thing that we lost from the episode was while you were guessing your nemesis's name, you suggested it was one of our fraternity brothers who is starting a website for us, and we lost that information. That information didn't get out there a week ago. It's getting out there, now.
Yeah. So, and I met that individual. I saw him over the last week, and I actually have the website now. But I actually never got into him. Are we able to put that website out there? So there's a really good chance that people are going to be able to listen to this podcast through our website that our fraternity brother put together, Spaz. So more to come on that. That'll probably be in the promotions for this episode. So yes, we have a website. So we talked about that. we also talked. This is just because I have other things to talk about, Obi, but this is just a quick recap of what everyone missed. The greatest episode of all time. We also heard about Skylar, the town drunk in Ketchikan, Alaska. The individual who told my wife that she looked like she just got out of bed. So the individual who told my mom that she looked like she just got out of the shower and slipped and fell in Barney's jizz. And the individual who thought I was aggressively probing him and giving him FUIs. That's Skylar, Ketchikan, Alaska. If you ever go up there to visit, look him up. It'll be 10:30 in the morning. He'll be drunk. So you'll know who he is. It's not like, oh, who's Skylar? Describe him. He's the guy at 10:30 a.m. that's drunk, probably being belligerent and bothering a family. So everyone missed Skylar. And what else, Obi? It was a great episode. What else?
I think that was it. I mean, we spent a lot of time on Skylar. We tried to come up with names like Skylar that we thought would be, atrocious.
We also talked about we talked about how Skylar's not a real man name, and how his parents were negligent in naming him that, and what type of parent would name their son Skylar. We talked about that. So I insulted Skylar's parents, and then we started coming up with other names like Buffy and stuff like that. That also would be an abomination if you named your kid, right?
Yes, that is what we did. That is what we got to. When I went on vacation, I met this week. I met a couple of gentlemen, young gentlemen, I should say. They were my son's friends. So we will not make fun of their names because they were so young, but they did have interesting names. One of them was named. His first name was the last name of a president. Lincoln.
His name was Lincoln. Oh, like Lincoln Riley.
Yep.
Okay.
And his other friend, his name is Kaleo.
Kaleo, what the hell is that?
We believe it's Italian.
I never heard that before.
Either have I. It was a really cool name.
And did you ask him to explain it? Because the reason I asked you that question is because really interesting story. Like Jalen is a somewhat popular name amongst boys these days. Yet the story goes that Jalen Rose, who was a basketball player for the Fab Five at Michigan in the early 90s, NBA players on ESPN now, his mom invented that name. It was his I guess an uncle was named James and another one was named Len and named Jalen, which means it's a made-up name. Like if someone makes it up, it's made up. And so anybody else who's named Jalen is not made up, it's copied, right? So I thought that was a pretty interesting story. So maybe this Kaleo guy, maybe Caligula was his aunt and Leo was his uncle.
I know his parents, so I will reach out and give you the lowdown. If I could
ask about the Caligula reference.
I doubt that. I doubt that.
You doubt that you'll ask, or you doubt that there's a relation?
I doubt that there's a relation.
So do you have the balls to ask?
We go way back. So I've known his mother longer than I've known you.
All right. So you have the balls to ask the mom if the name came from Caligula.
I do, but that's not how I'm going to word the question. I am going to say, hey, what's the story behind Kaleo? And then when I'm done, I'm going to go, thank God it's not Caligula. Like that.
But what if it is?
Then I'm going to be very excited.
And if it is,
then I'm going to be like, damn, I missed out when we were kids, didn't I?
But if she says it has to do with Caligula, like out of the blue, because you don't have the balls to ask her. But if she says it, you then have to cop to the fact that your podcast partner knew that was where the name came from.
I will. I'll jump right on. I'll be like, you got to listen to my podcast.
You mean she's not already listening to the podcast? I mean, you've known her longer than you've known me.
I know, and it's a shame, but no, I do not believe she's listening.
But then again, we met like a week before our first podcast episode a year ago, so we've only known each other for like.
Yes, we built this rapport up in the studio.
Yeah, well, yes, it was like an arranged marriage. Like we were put together like those boy bands, like NSYNC, One Direction, the Backstreet Boys, right? We were kind of like that.
Right. Some genius. You know, meanwhile, I more like to think of us as more like Adam Carolla and Jimmy Kimmel if they had no talent.
You're telling me that Adam Carolla
No, if they had no talent, that would be us.
Oh. So, all right. So, Obi, I was on vacation last week myself, and somebody came up to me and was amazed that we have a podcast, and says, "You got to tell me about this podcast. You have like all these downloads. Like, how the hell did you do that?" And I said, "Well, I'm old, cranky, and I just complain a lot." And she goes, "Oh, I got a topic for you." I said, "Well, what's the topic?" She said, "Beach etiquette." So I was at the beach. This young lady lives at the beach, and here's the topic she wanted. Well, it wasn't. It's a topic. It's beach etiquette. But here's what she wanted to complain about. She says, "Don't you hate it when you lug all of the stuff to the beach? You lug the cooler, you lug the beach chairs, you lug the tent, all of it, right? You show up and you set everything up, and then your buddy comes by with just a little beach chair prancing up the beach, and they sit down under your tent in the shade, and they say, 'Oh, can you put my bottle of water in your cooler?'" Obi, what do you think of that?
Um, well, that's tough because it really depends. If you're like you or me, and we're a family of four, and we do that, and then my buddy, singular, meets me and my family at the beach, I'm not so irked. But if my buddy and his family show up and then just join in our space that we have created, that would bother me. So I think it's a hazy line. I don't know where it goes from okay to that's way too many people, but there's a line somewhere.
So, Obi, you won't even go on vacation with your entire family, but you're okay with some freeloader sitting in your shade next to you on the beach.
One freeloader?
Yeah.
Like,
one freeloader.
I think so. Like,
because you used an example. You said if my family of four was on the beach, but people have listened to this podcast know that there's no way in hell there's ever a family of four on the beach.
Well, we could go down, where I live, we go down the shore for a day. That's not a vacation. That's a day trip. We do four for a day trip.
Okay. Day trips. Okay. All right. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. I had to get that out of the way. All right.
Yes.
So now what kind of tent do you have that has enough shade for 5 people?
Sometimes, but not often, we'll bring the pop-up 10-foot by 10-foot. Usually we wouldn't have that kind of space. We usually have the umbrella that just covers my wife and I, and then my chair has the extra shade thing on top on my beach chair. But we do have a 10 by 10 that I could see us bringing if we were so inclined, which we brought to the beach years ago when I was learning that the rule of 3 needed to be something that existed. One of the trips that taught me that the rule of 3 needed to exist.
Well, beach trips are always good for that. So
yeah.
So I'm on this person's side. I think at the beach, if you get to reap what you sow. Like if you bring shade, you get to sit in the shade. If you don't bring shade, you don't get to sit in it. If you bring cooler, you get to put shit in the cooler. If you don't bring a cooler, well, you better drink quick because it's going to get warm. I'm a big fan of that. I have another. If you bring a towel, you get to use the towel. If you don't bring a towel, you don't get to use a towel.
I'm on board with the towel. Bring your own towel. Don't use my towels.
Yeah, right?
Yeah, definitely there. I'm on there.
I think the only thing I will share at the beach, and I got is the freaking shovel. If you want to take the pail and the shovel and you want to go dig a hole, I don't care. Go do it. The reason I'm okay with that is because I'm not bringing that stuff in the first place. There's no place for digging holes. I see these families. Okay, that's another thing. Let's get by this. Families, and I know Obi, you're the family that does this, so this will be a good one. Families that dig like holes at the beach, like adults with their kids that dig holes at the beach. Come on, like you're an adult. You shouldn't be digging holes in the sand. I got a problem with that. What about you?
Well, I'm not that family. I cannot recall going to the beach with my children and digging a hole. I can recall being a kid and digging a hole. I can even recall being an older teenager, possibly even in my 20s, and digging giant holes to bury people in. but I don't recall digging holes with my children at the beach. Both of my children are big time. We're going to go in the ocean and swim type kids. And when they come out, they go to the boardwalk. That's who they've been their entire ocean lives. Not a lot of digging. It's hard for me to judge a parent who wants to play with his kid and dig in the beach. I'm gonna say I'm okay with that parent-child time. Absolutely, I'm okay with it. I think it's cool.
So you're like 0 for 2 today. Like the wrong opinion on 2 subjects that I brought up. Like 0 for 2, terrible today.
Oh, I know. I'm much more wrong on this one than the other one. Like I was had some questions, and I think that you're wrong on the other one, and that we can discuss why you are very wrong and why one friend showing up with a chair asking for some shade and a spot in your cooler for his one glass of water is no big deal. Like that's nothing. And you didn't say like he brought a 6-pack, was throwing your stuff out, his whole your kids couldn't get under the blanket, under the tent anymore. No, that's not a problem. Now here, you want to, people dig holes, you sprain an ankle and stuff. I get that. That's dangerous.
I just don't understand why an adult wants to sit there and get sand in their shorts digging a hole.
They don't, but they're bonding with their child. They're giving their child the beach experience. They don't want to do it.
You can bond with your child a million other ways. You know what? I don't want to dig a hole with my kids, and guess what? I don't dig a hole with my kids. It's that easy. You just say no. Like some parents have to learn how to say no to their kids. But Obi, you said if my buddy brought a 6-pack, well, if they bring a 6-pack, they can sit anywhere they want.
Oh, okay. All right. So if they bring a 6-pack, they can throw your kid's water out of the cooler as long as they got the 6-pack for you.
Well, first of all, you got to understand, if you bring a 6-pack, it turns into a 4-pack real quick. Because you're going to have one and I'm having one. So there's only 4 that have to go into the cooler.
Okay.
That's the first piece of math you have to understand if somebody brings a 6-pack with me, right?
Right.
That's not a lot of water that has to leave the cooler at that point. Then the second thing you got to understand is it's hot at the beach. Probably going to become a 3-pack real soon. You know what I'm saying?
I got you. Why even put the second beers in the cooler? Just put them right in the sand where it's a little cool. In the hole that family dug next to you, you stick your beers in there, cover them in sand. You don't even need to get that second beer into the cooler.
You're right, because that hole is like down at the water level.
Right.
60-degree water down there. All right, so let's see. Let's see about the. Okay, so here's the other one. Are you a big fan at the beach when the ice cream man comes? Are you the family that always goes and gets ice cream, or are you the one that absolutely, no matter what, never gets ice cream? And I know
so we don't.
No shades of gray on that.
Okay, so in that case,
it's
we
either all in or all out.
We never get ice cream from the ice cream peddler. We always get ice cream from a particular ice cream store.
Okay. Do you want to know something that I found really interesting with the ice cream peddler? Because I had a teenager that went to the ice cream peddler to get ice cream. They take Venmo.
Okay, they're moving up in the world.
They won't take credit cards, but if you don't have cash, they'll take Venmo. So that's what I learned.
Okay.
I think we're on the same level. I don't go get the ice cream. I'm sitting at the beach. I don't need to. When I hear the freaking bell ring, it's like the worst thing. But what I do like to watch at the beach when the bell rings, I do like to watch the families around me, because sometimes, in particular on this last trip, it actually ruined the family's day. The kid wanted to get ice cream. The parents didn't want him. And let me just tell you, they ended up leaving, and their kid was still crying. It ended their beach. And I think it might even created a fight between the mom and the dad. I don't think anybody in that family was happy. And it was all because of a ringing bell.
And now they only travel with 3.
Well, there were 3 to start with.
Oh.
So now I think the kid's not allowed to go on trips anymore.
Now they're down to
like
2.
Yeah, they're down to 2. He was like 2 years old. But the problem is when they leave the kid home and they go away at 2, they might be back to 4.
Yes, that's a risk they're going to take, I'm sure.
Exactly. So that's why in that case, they travel with 3. It might keep them from becoming a 4,
Right. Or
kid have an ice cream meltdown. He'll be fine.
Or he could or could not, may or may not get a vasectomy.
Yeah, I mean, if he ever wanted to know what that was like, and he only wanted to know hypothetically, he could listen to like episode 27 or something.
Yeah.
And if we were good at the podcast, we know exactly what episode the hypothetical dissectionist we're talking about is. But
That's right. And the name of it, I think it was the pods in the cradle, but that could be wrong.
Yeah, the pods in the cradle makes sense. I can tell everybody the title started with it had pods in it.
Yeah, it's in there. It's not too long ago. It's in the description. It's a great episode.
So Obi, I know we're not a sports podcast, but I have another question for you, and then you may have a question for me. But I'm just again trying to get opinions here. You're an older gentleman now. I mean, as we're getting into the cranky years of our lives, fantasy football or no?
I live for it.
Live for it.
I live for it.
And so-
As a matter of fact, the reason we are recording the day that we're recording is every other day for the rest of the week. I have a fantasy football draft.
So how many leagues are you in?
I am in 6 dynasty fantasy football leagues.
6 fantasy football leagues. You have that many friends that you're in 6 different leagues?
I am in leagues with multiple people who I don't know and have met literally just on the internet to form fantasy football leagues. I've recently quit like 2 leagues just as like, oh, I'm in too many.
8's too many, but 6 is like a good number.
6 may be too many, but yes.
I think anybody listening to this podcast will say 6 is way too many. So let me ask you a question. Like, how much time do you invest into fantasy football then? 6 leagues. I mean, are you spending hours a day or do you just suck at it?
Hours a day, hours a month, year round. And I have my return on investment is well over 300% over the last 5 years.
Wow.
Yes.
That doesn't factor into your time, of course.
No, it does not count time at all. And probably if we counted time at what I get paid at my day job, it would be a loss of money. But it's what I choose to do. So
6 fantasy football leagues. There you have it, people. So you're wondering if anybody's wondering who plays fantasy football, it's Obi and strangers on the internet. So if you want to play fantasy football, you could go on the internet and you could find Obi.
yeah. Oh, and I'm at this. Yes, I can go on and on, but I only do dynasty fantasy football for the now. Like you'd really have to have a very interesting league for me to join redraft.
Okay, that's good to know.
Yeah.
I do not play fantasy football. I've not played fantasy football in probably 20 years. I don't have time for it. But
Did you play fantasy football on the league I started at the house? I don't think you did.
I did. That was back before the computer.
Yes.
I had to wait until somebody tallied up the scores, and yeah, I think people cheated.
Probably. I was the commissioner and didn't win.
Well, that's because you weren't in charge of adding up the scores.
Probably. So I blame Opie, who's different than Obi.
Yeah, Opie. Whatever happened to Opie?
Last I checked, he married the last woman he was dating at Rutgers. I think they met at Rutgers. She definitely went to Rutgers. And they didn't have any kids last I checked. But that's subject to change. And he still plays chess.
What about fantasy football?
I have not played fantasy football with him in quite some time.
Ever since he beat you and you got upset.
If you recall, he moved to Chicago, and after he moved to Chicago, at those times it was a lot harder to play fantasy football with one guy in Chicago.
See, I don't even recall where anybody moved because we didn't have cell phones. So after I graduated from school, I didn't talk to anybody.
I think he moved to Chicago the year you graduated.
Yeah, because I didn't have phone. I didn't have phone numbers. I remember I had an address book when I went away to college for my high school friends.
Right.
But I lost that, and then when I left college, like I don't even know how I kept in touch with the people I did keep. I think they.
Probably, yeah. Imagine that. Imagine if you were to tell me that the reason you stayed in touch with Bill is because Bill was the one initiating those conversations. I'm standing here in shock.
I think there was a third party involved. I think there had to have been a third party that kept in touch with both of us.
Okay. I would imagine that's stuff.
I think it was him.
Okay.
I think it was him. And I saw a tattoo this past weekend.
Excellent. I know you guys are the little football foursome. Are you guys, we're not a sports podcast, are you guys back in with Shiano this season? Will you be going to games?
Well, I think I'm going to go to a game. I got a big birthday coming up, so I might celebrate my big birthday with a Rutgers football game. So yeah, I'm always all in on Rutgers football, but I don't have I don't have time for fantasy football, and I don't have time to go to a Rutgers football game every week because that's like a 12-hour endeavor. You got to drive there. For me, it was like an hour and a half drive.
Ooh, yeah, oh yeah.
Tailgate for like 5 hours. So now we're up to 6.5 hours. Then the game's like 3.5 hours, right? So now we're up to 10 hours. And then you can't leave right away because there's traffic. So that's another hour. So what? We're up to 11.5 hours. And then you got to drive home. So it's like a 13-hour day. Think about that, right? And if the game's at noon, you're getting up ridiculous. If the game's at 3:30, you're getting home. And if God forbid the game's at 8 o'clock at night, you're getting home like at 3 in the morning. So I don't have time.
I understand.
I gotta get up. I gotta like walk the dog.
Yeah. You got to get up to not watch your fantasy football team on Sunday.
Well, yeah. So I just watch the Red Zone because I do sports gambling, as you know. I just gamble on the games and I do the parlays and I need this guy. So it's like fantasy football because I need this guy to get 50 yards. I need this guy to run, throw for 100 yards. And I need this guy to score 2 touchdowns, and I win big bucks. So I'm kind of like fantasy football, but not the same.
I would agree. That is a different. You're kind of like daily fantasy football.
Yeah. So Obi, as we also talk about past great episodes, another great episode that people should go back and find in the archive is the first day of school. So here's a really interesting thing. The first day of school is coming up. Can't forget about that. We did an episode last year on the first day of school, which I thought up until the last episode that was lost. I actually thought the first day of school was the best episode we ever did. And it's got like the lowest number of downloads. So I guess people just don't like hearing old guys complain about the first day of school. But I encourage everyone, if you have kids going back to school, listen to that episode because you're going to hear about how crazy school is these days. Like summer work. My kids had to do summer work. Who ever heard of doing summer work? Dumbest thing. It's called summer vacation, not summer do more school. You know what I'm saying?
I do know what you're saying. Yes. My son, this is the shock I learned about summer work this year. Every year they have to read a book. And every year it's a struggle to get my son to read the book. This year, the book he chose was a graphic novel. Now, my kid is a pretty big comic book fan. So he read it in like 4 days. And then he told me, oh, every year there's a comic book, a graphic novel. Apologies to the people who care about that. Yes. I'm trying to be woke here about my comic books versus graphic novels. And I looked at him and I said, well, why don't you choose the graphic novel every year? And he was like, I don't know which one it is till you pick. I'm like, you can Google that. You know how much easier both of our summers would have been had you done that for the previous 2 or 3 summers?
So he just picked the wrong books the other summer?
He just picked a book based on its description, not on the fact that he loves graphic novels and he can read it in 4 days. Like, I mean, I know that's what I would have done every year.
So I can, this is a podcast of one-upping too. I can one-up you on that one because my Alex, because they're both named Alex, my Alex has to read a book every summer. She just reads the same book. Which means she hasn't read a book for the last 3 summers because she's used the same book for the last 4 years.
I give her props. See, that which my Alex, but they have a choice of books. You can't just read a book, but good for her.
Her school, because it's middle school, just you have to read one book and be prepared to come to school and talk about it. So she's got a different English teacher every year, so she just comes and talks about the same book.
And what book is it? Harry Potter. She saw the movie. She doesn't even read the book.
It's not Harry Potter. I wish I don't even give a shit about this stuff. Like I'm like so like. First of all, I didn't even care about my own schoolwork, but the other part is I'm just so anti-summer work. Like I look for reasons why my kids don't have to do summer work. Like for example, I got an email from the school principal last week, and one of the summer, in addition to reading the one book, Alex has to do 20 Khan Academy math lessons. Now, any parent out there, Khan Academy is this like online like tutoring software, whatever, and you can do math lessons. And each kid at the school gets a Chromebook, but you have to turn the Chromebook back in on the last day of school, and you get the Chromebook back on the first day of school, right? So I said to the principal, who's still not responded to me yet, I said, help me understand this. My daughter turned her Chromebook in June. She has to do 20 Khan Academy lessons before the first day of school. When she gets her Chromebook, how is she supposed to do the lesson? And I haven't gotten an answer to that. I think that's a legitimate question.
I do think it's a legitimate question. I mean, obviously she could use a work computer, but that's not the point here.
Well, it's making assumptions.
Right. That should not be made. Yes, I agree. Yeah.
So in my household, I have a laptop. Actually, I don't have a laptop. My employer has a laptop that they let me use. My wife has an employer that lets her use the laptop. We really aren't supposed to be having kids play around on our laptops, right? But
Right.
if push came to shove, and if this was like summer work was like, oh my God, you're not going to graduate high school, we could probably use the laptop, right? But there are families that go to this school that I guarantee do not have laptops in the house at all, which is why they give the kids Chromebooks. So it's so stupid. Why would you give them computer work if you took their computers away? Like sometimes people just don't think.
Well, every kid has a phone.
Okay.
But that's not true either, by the way. But yes,
it's not true. It's not true. But if you have a phone, is that appropriate for doing math? I don't know.
I don't know. I do not know. I agree with your basic premise. I'm giving answers that I don't buy. If you would like someone to do something on a computer, you need to supply a computer, especially in school.
So
I agree with your point.
You finally got one right. You're 1 for 3 today. So that puts you in the Hall of Fame in the Major League Baseball.
That's right. If they're home runs, forget it.
Well, then you got records.
Just call me Aaron Judge.
You're a Mets fan. You're not allowed.
Well, he'll be a Met next year, from at least one that I hear, but I digress.
I don't think so. He won't be wearing number 24, that's for sure. But that's a whole other sports show.
Yes. We're not.
Last story I gotta tell, and then we can, because we're on sports a little bit, and then we can tell everybody we suck and have a great weekend. But here's the deal, Obi. I saw this guy tell a story. He was at Fenway Park. Now, Fenway Park, home of the Boston Red Sox. As much as I hate the Red Sox, and I'm not a fan of Boston Red Sox fans, I do admit they're intelligent about the game of baseball. They just picked the wrong team to root for. However, you know, at every Major League Baseball stadium, number 42 is retired. Number 42 is the number that Jackie Robinson wore. Also the number that Mariano Rivera wore, greatest reliever in the history of baseball. So this guy's at Fenway Park. He's with his wife, and his wife is saying, why is number 42 retired? Like, what Red Sox wore 42? And the guy says, oh, no, that wasn't a Red Sox. That was Mariano Rivera. They retired his number because he's the greatest pitcher of all time, and he dominated the Red Sox. But that's why it's not in red like all the other Red Sox numbers. It's in blue because he was a Yankee, but it's just show respect for Mariano Rivera. I'm flabbergasted that like a grown man would like say that out loud. In Boston, by the way. In
Boston. The charm is that he's an idiot. The Red Sox retired a Yankees number on purpose, out of respect for that player.
Yeah, it's not even plausible. Like she should have saw through the bullshit right away, right?
Yeah. So she looked at it and said, "Oh, so you don't know why? Gotcha."
So I came to a game with an idiot.
Yeah, right. All right. So I guess we're getting divorced then. Gotcha.
Anyway, that's the sports wrap up. Like, if you're into sports, you might have enjoyed that. If you don't like sports, hopefully you turn this off a couple minutes.
Yes. So I have some new news about our podcast.
Oh boy.
Yes, a slight change of etiquette that I learned today. I'm now allowed to once again talk about my oldest son and occasionally accidentally use his name. And that is all I have for right now on that subject. But if an appropriate story comes through, we will talk about it.
So you you were informed by your oldest son today that you're not allowed to talk about him?
No, I was informed our podcast. I wasn't supposed to talk about him. I did my best not to. He said something to the effect of, "My name will not leave your lips," in a threatening manner, one I did not take seriously, but I respected. But he has changed his tune, or I should say, he has started doing things that has now made it so I don't need that. The reasons why I need to keep his name out my mouth are no longer valid. So if a good story about him arises going forward, it will be shared. We will laugh at him and we will enjoy it.
I'm looking forward to it. I will. One last thing on kids. My youngest daughter, who we've already talked about today, who read the same book for the last 4 years for summer work, she also recently discovered this podcast, Toby. While we were on vacation, she told me she's listened to a couple episodes, and I was very proud of her. And then a day went by, and then we were talking, and she goes, "Oh yeah, Dad, I forgot to tell you, I listened to your podcast when I was having trouble sleeping, and it did the trick."
Okay, so I don't think I like your Alex all that much. I feel hurt by her.
Well, I think she makes it her life's being to hurt me.
Oh, well, that's part of the name Alex. I can assure you of that. Yes, my Alex would have said the same shit to me and not meant it. He would have been up there laughing his ass off and said, "No, Dad, listen to your podcast. It was great. I don't need to take melatonin anymore."
Exactly. That's basically what my kid.
At least she didn't tell you were bullying me.
No, she did not. It's just the grown adults that tell me I bully you.
Okay.
I'm sure I'm going to get accused of bullying you today because I told you your opinion is wrong.
Yeah, but for those who feel that Ed's bullying me, I know I'm right, and that's all that matters. Ed's, because you know what? Because Ed's the type of guy who takes his whole rigmarole down to the beach, finds the perfect spot, and it's right in front of you, and he don't care, and he sets his stuff up. And then when his friend shows up, he says, "Oh no, you can't be there. You're blocking the people behind me."
Well, you know what? Now you just made this episode a little longer because that is one beach etiquette. We didn't bring that up, but that is one thing. My wife says, "Why aren't we over there?" I said, "Because we would be in front of people. You don't go in front of people." I do not do that. I always go. I'll go behind people, or I'll go where there's nobody. But I do not go in front of people because I think it's
okay. Good, but your wife does. So
my wife would. But here's the thing, and here's the other thing that I didn't even bring up, but I'll bring it up because I'm a cranky old man. I became the mule for my family, so we rented bikes. By the way, I rode my bike once, and the reason I only rode my bike once is to get to the beach. Somebody had to drag the cart with all the crap in it, and I was the guy elected to do that. Everybody else rode their bike with their little old chair on their back, and then they sat under my shade that I brought all by myself, and then put their stuff in my cooler that was in my cart that I dragged to the beach.
See, that's a different scenario than your friend just showing up. See, in that scenario, they were there to help and then left you. Versus my friend shows up. "Hey, Ed, you're going to be at the beach? Great. I'll come on down. I got my water in my chair. Oh, lucky me. I didn't know." That's different than your family being like, "Good luck, Dad."
I mean, in fairness to my family, they rode their bikes slow so they could keep me company on the walk.
Oh, you mean make fun of you for struggling while you carried the shit?
Dad, you're sweating a lot.
Thanks, Alex.
Why are you breathing so heavy?
Mm-hmm. Okay, that makes sense. I can see why now. You were like, "No, now Obi can't show up out of the blue with a chair and a drink."
Unless it's a six-pack.
Unless I can show up with a chair and drinks, but not a chair and a drink. I got you. We're good there. And I think that takes us to the end. I'm Obi. That's Ed. The charm is that we suck. Find us wherever you get your podcasts. We're drinking from the garden hose.